The great meeting hall of New Concordia stretched for miles under a dome that showed the stars. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in their special chairs, each designed for their unique bodies. Some breathed different air through masks. Others floated in tanks of liquid. The Zephyrians hung from the ceiling like bats, while the rock-like granite people sat motionless as statues. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked across the smooth floor toward the human section. Her simple gray suit looked plain next to the colorful robes and shining armor of the other species. She carried only a small datapad and a cup of coffee. The other ambassadors barely noticed her. This was how it had been for 200 years, since humans first reached the stars. They were the quiet ones, the helpful ones, the species that could learn any language and adapt to any world. Useful, but not important. The Galactic Council had been meeting for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. Ancient species like the ethereals had technology that seemed like magic. The consortium of worlds controlled trade routes across half the galaxy. Even the newest members had conquered multiple star systems before joining. Humans had only 12 colonies outside their home system. Their ships were smaller and slower than most. Their weapons were basic. Their armies were tiny. They made good translators and traders, nothing more. Sarah took her seat as Council Speaker Vorthak called for order. The tall, blue-skinned alien had been leading these meetings for longer than human civilization had existed. His forearms moved in graceful patterns as he spoke. "We gather today to discuss the growing threat of the HFY hegemony," he announced. His voice echoed through translation devices in dozens of languages. Murmurs filled the hall. Everyone knew about the HFY. They had appeared from the outer rim 50 years ago with massive fleets and advanced weapons. World after world fell to their expansion. Entire species had been enslaved or wiped out. General Thexmore of the HFY military stood to address the council. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin like stone and eyes that glowed red. Scars covered his arms and face from countless battles. His voice was like grinding metal. "The hegemony offers peace to all who submit," he said. "We are the future of this galaxy. Join us willingly, or be conquered. There is no third choice." The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Some species demanded military action. Others called for economic sanctions. A few suggested negotiation. Sarah listened quietly and took notes. "What of the human colonies on the frontier?" asked Ambassador Kretal of the Vorthan Collective. 3 of your worlds lie directly in the HFY expansion path." All eyes turned to Sarah. She stood slowly and walked to the speaking platform. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. "Human colonies of Kepler 442, Ross 128, and New Geneva are peaceful farming and mining worlds," she said in her calm voice. "They have no military value. Perhaps the hegemony could simply go around them." Laughter rippled through the HFY section. General Thexmore's red eyes gleamed with amusement. "The weak always beg to be ignored," he rumbled. "But all worlds have resources. All populations can work. Your colonies will surrender or burn. Choose now." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Her face showed no fear or anger. "We choose neither." "Then you choose death," Thexmore replied. The council session continued for hours. Species after species debated what to do about the HFY threat. Some wanted to form a military alliance, but their fleets were scattered across thousands of light years. Others suggested economic pressure, but the hegemony cared nothing for trade agreements. A few even proposed surrender. Through it all, Sarah sat quietly. She spoke only when asked direct questions, giving short, polite answers. She agreed that the HFY were a threat. She hoped for a peaceful solution. She thanked the council for their concern about human colonies. When the session ended, other ambassadors approached her with sympathy and advice. The Centaurian Hive Queen offered to help evacuate human civilians. The crystal beings of Vortani suggested hiding the colonists in their deep mines. Even the proud ethereals offered sanctuary on their protected worlds. Sarah thanked them all politely. "We appreciate your concern," she said, "but humans prefer to handle their own problems." That evening, Sarah returned to the human embassy. It was smaller and simpler than the other diplomatic buildings. No guards stood at the gates. No weapons scanned visitors. It looked like what it was supposed to be, the embassy of a minor, peaceful species. Inside, Sarah walked down a hallway lined with pictures from Earth and the colonies. Families working in fields, children playing in parks, scientists studying alien plants. The images showed a people who seemed to care only about farming, learning, and building homes on new worlds. She reached her private office and locked the door. Then she spoke a single word in an old human language. Authorization. The walls shimmered and changed. Hidden screens appeared showing star maps, fleet positions, and tactical reports. The peaceful pictures were replaced by displays of ship designs, weapons systems, and battle plans. Sarah's simple datapad transformed into a complex command interface. Admiral Marcus Reeves appeared on the main screen. He was a hard-faced man with gray hair and cold blue eyes. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of his flagship, the UHS Retribution. "Ambassador," he said with a slight nod. "I watched the council session. Dexmore seems confident." "He should be," Sarah replied. "The Kethvar have never lost a campaign. 600 ships, advanced weapons, experienced crews. By all logical analysis, they should crush our outer colonies within weeks." "Should is an interesting word," Reeves said. "Are our assets in place?" Sarah checked her displays. Green lights appeared across multiple star systems. "All observation posts confirm ready status. Deep space monitoring stations are active. The Merchant Guild reports all cargo ships have reached their positions." "Good." Reeves smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Let them come to Kepler 442. We've been preparing for this day for a very long time." The connection ended, and Sarah's office returned to its peaceful appearance. She walked to the window and looked out at the alien city below. Thousands of different species lived and worked together in New Concordia. They had built a civilization based on cooperation and trade. It was beautiful. It was also weak. The galaxy had enjoyed peace for so long that its people had forgotten how to fight real wars. They had rules about civilian targets and prisoner treatment. They fought to control territory, not to destroy enemies completely. They believed in honor and fair play. Humans remembered things the galaxy had forgotten. They remembered what it meant to fight for survival. They remembered that sometimes the only way to have peace was to make war so terrible that no one dared challenge you again. Sarah opened her personal communication device and sent a single message to Earth. "The harvest season begins." Across human space, the message was received and understood. On 12 colonies, families continued their daily lives while hidden defense systems came online. Merchant ships changed course toward predetermined positions. Scientists working on alien worlds began their final observations. The galaxy saw humans as peaceful farmers and curious explorers. Soon they would learn the truth. Humans were farmers who knew that sometimes you had to burn the weeds to protect the crops. They were explorers who mapped not just new worlds but the weaknesses of every species they met. The Kethvar were about to discover that the quiet species had been quiet for a reason. They had been listening. They had been learning. They had been preparing. And now they were ready to show the galaxy what humans really were. The Kethvar fleet came out of hyperspace like a storm of metal and fire. 200 ships spread across the dark between stars, their hulls gleaming with weapon ports and armor plating. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue-green world of Kepler 442 grow larger on the screens. "A farming colony," he said to his officers. "This will take less than an hour." The planet looked peaceful from orbit. Small cities dotted the continents. Ships moved slowly between orbital stations. Radio signals carried the normal chatter of civilian traffic. It was exactly what the Kethvar expected from the weak humans. "Send the surrender demand," Kethvar ordered. The message went out on all frequencies. "This world now belongs to the Kethvar hegemony. All humans will report to designated gathering points for processing. Any resistance will result in orbital bombardment. You have 30 minutes to comply." The response came quickly from the planetary governor, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes. "This is Governor Martinez of Kepler 442. We request time to evacuate civilians, especially children and elderly." Kethvar laughed. "You have 30 minutes for everyone. Move quickly." What happened next confused the Kethvar. Instead of panic and rushed evacuations, the planet's cities went dark. Communication signals stopped. Ships began moving in strange patterns. It looked almost like "Admiral," the sensor officer called out. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the asteroid belt." Kethvar looked at the display. The belt between Kepler 442 and its outer moon had seemed empty when they arrived. Now it blazed with power signatures. Ships were emerging from hiding places inside the rocks. Not large ships, but fast ones with unusual energy patterns. "How many?" Kethvar demanded. 37 vessels, sir. Human design, but unlike anything in our database. Captain Elena Vasquez sat in the command chair of the UHS Defiance, hidden deep inside asteroid KX-7791. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. No one spoke unless necessary. The ship's systems ran silent and cold. All units report ready? Her communications officer whispered. Elena nodded. Execute Darwin Protocol. Across the asteroid belt, human ships came alive. They had been waiting for weeks, crews living in the cold and dark, breathing recycled air and eating protein bars. Now their patience would be rewarded. The Kethvar had made their first mistake by sending their entire fleet into the belt to destroy the hidden ships. They thought overwhelming firepower would crush the smaller human vessels quickly. They were wrong. The UHS Defiance fired first, not at a ship, but at asteroid GX-3142. The rock exploded in a chain reaction that sent fragments flying in all directions. Each piece had been carefully calculated to strike specific Kethvar vessels at precise angles. 3 enemy ships disappeared in balls of fire. 5 more lost their shields to high-speed rock impacts. The Kethvar formation broke apart in confusion. What was that? Kethvar shouted as his ship shook from impacts. Before his officers could answer, more explosions lit up the belt. The humans had spent months preparing the asteroids, placing charges and calculating trajectories. They turned the entire field into a weapon, but the real surprise was how the human ships fought. They moved in ways that seemed impossible, coordinating without apparent communication. When Kethvar vessels tried to target them, they found their prey had vanished behind rocks or into electromagnetic dead zones. The human ships were smaller and carried fewer weapons, but they fought like pack hunters, working together to isolate and destroy individual targets. They used the asteroids as cover, the planet's magnetic field as camouflage, and even their own destroyed ships as improvised weapons. Captain Vasquez watched her tactical display as the battle developed. The Kethvar had superior firepower, but they were fighting in an environment the humans had studied and prepared for months. Every rock, every energy field, every piece of space debris had been mapped and weaponized. Target the command ship, she ordered. All units, focus fire. 12 human vessels appeared from different directions around Admiral Kethvar's flagship. They fired in perfect synchronization, overwhelming the ship's shields in seconds. The massive vessel broke apart, taking the Kethvar's command structure with it. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 73 Kethvar ships were destroyed or disabled. The humans lost 11 vessels, but their crews had fought to the end. Several ships had rammed enemy vessels when their weapons failed. Others had used their reactors as bombs. The surviving Kethvar ships tried to retreat to hyperspace. They found the jump points blocked by human mines and automated weapon platforms. Only 17 vessels escaped, and they carried stories that would haunt their species for generations. Stories of humans who kept fighting with their ships falling apart around them. Of crews who sang battle songs while their vessels burned. Of a captain who guided his dying ship into the engine core of a Kethvar dreadnought while laughing. But the most terrifying story was what happened to the Kethvar survivors. Traditional galactic warfare had rules about prisoners and wounded enemies. When someone surrendered, they were treated according to ancient codes of conduct. Medical aid was provided, prisoners were exchanged, the injured were evacuated. The humans followed none of these rules. Captain Vasquez stood on the bridge of her damaged ship and looked at the tactical display. 17 Kethvar vessels remained in the system, hiding behind the planet's far moon. Their crews were sending surrender signals and requesting medical assistance for their wounded. Orders, Captain? Her weapons officer asked. Elena's face was like stone. There are no prisoners in Darwin Protocol. Hunt them down, all of them. What followed became known in whispered stories across Kethvar space as the culling. Human ships, some barely functioning, pursued the survivors relentlessly. They ignored surrender signals and medical requests. When Kethvar vessels tried to hide, the humans waited patiently until life support failed. When crews abandoned ship, the humans destroyed the escape pods. It took 2 days to hunt down the last survivor. A single Kethvar scout ship hiding in the planet's rings. The human vessel that found it was the UHS Persistence, so damaged it was running on backup power. The Kethvar captain sent a final message. We surrender. We have wounded aboard. Please show mercy. The response came from Captain Vasquez herself. You asked for war. This is what war looks like. The scout ship disappeared in a ball of plasma fire. When Admiral Reeves arrived 3 days later with the main human fleet, He found Kepler 442 intact and defended. The orbital space was filled with Kethvar wreckage and the bodies of the invaders. Not one enemy soldier had reached the planet's surface. Governor Martinez met him at the orbital station. She looked older than before, her face lined with exhaustion and grief. "Casualties?" Reeves asked. "We lost 43 ships and their crews," she reported. "The colony itself took no damage. The Kethvar never got close enough to threaten civilian areas." Reeves nodded. "And prisoners?" "None." The admiral studied the tactical reports from the battle. The humans had been outnumbered 6-1. They had faced superior technology and experienced warriors. By all traditional calculations, they should have been destroyed within hours. Instead, they had won decisively and eliminated the entire enemy force. "Send a message to Earth," Reeves ordered. "Tell them Phase 1 is complete. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you threaten human civilians." Across Kethvar space, word of the disaster spread quickly. An entire fleet destroyed by a handful of human ships, no survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. The Kethvar military command dismissed the reports as exaggerations. Humans were peaceful farmers and traders. They could not possibly fight with such savagery. There had to be another explanation. But deep in the hegemony's intelligence centers, analysis began on the scattered data from the battle. What they found would change everything. The humans had not won through luck or desperation. They had won through superior tactics, detailed preparation, and a complete understanding of Kethvar weaknesses. Most terrifyingly, the recordings showed that the human crews had been calm throughout the battle. They had not fought in panic or rage. They had fought with cold, methodical precision, like professionals doing a job they had trained for their entire lives. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's 200 years of peace had not made them soft. It had given them time to prepare for the war that would define their future among the stars. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Kethvar hegemony, conquerors of worlds and enslavers of species, had lost an entire fleet to the humans. Not defeated, annihilated. 200 ships reduced to floating debris with no survivors. In the great meeting halls of New Concordia, ambassadors whispered in shocked tones. Some called it impossible. Others wondered if the reports were true. A few began to look at Ambassador Sarah Chen with new eyes when she walked past. Sarah seemed unchanged. She still wore her simple gray suits and carried her plain datapad. She still spoke quietly and politely in council sessions. But now there was something different in how other species watched her. A new wariness. A growing fear. The Kethvar Supreme Command called an emergency meeting on their capital world of Thekmor Prime. General Thexmore stood before the Hegemony Council, his scarred face dark with rage and confusion. "It was a trick," he declared. "Humans are weak. They always have been. This was some kind of trap, nothing more." War leader Vextar disagreed. She was older than Thexmore and had conquered more worlds. "I have studied the battle reports. The human tactics were unusual. They fought like nothing we have seen before. Desperate creatures fight strangely when cornered," Thexmore replied. "It means nothing, but the data from Kepler 442 told a different story. The surviving records showed human coordination that seemed impossible without advanced AI systems. Their ships had moved in perfect formations while maintaining communication silence. They had known exactly where to place their asteroid charges for maximum effect. Most disturbing were the personal recordings from Kethvar crew members. They showed humans fighting with methodical precision, not desperate fury. The enemy had sung ancient war songs while their ships burned around them. They had smiled while ramming Kethvar vessels. It was the behavior of a species that saw war not as tragedy, but as art. The hegemony decided to respond with overwhelming force. They would mobilize the largest fleet in galactic history and crush the humans completely. 600 ships from across their empire began moving toward human space. Veterans from dozens of campaigns. Weapons that could crack planets. Enough. Firepower to sterilize entire star systems. Surely the humans would negotiate now. Instead, Admiral Marcus Reeves sent a message to every major government in the galaxy. He appeared on screens across thousands of worlds, standing on the bridge of his flagship in full military uniform. His cold blue eyes looked directly into the camera. "The Kethvar hegemony has declared war on humanity," he said in a calm voice. "They have mobilized their forces to invade our territory and enslave our people. We hereby invoke the Terra Doctrine." He paused, letting the unfamiliar words sink in. "Any species that attacks human civilians will face complete destruction. Not defeat. Not occupation, Annihilation. We will not stop until every ship in their fleet is destroyed, every world in their empire is pacified, and every member of their government is dead or captured. The transmission ended with coordinates and a timestamp. The Terra fleet departs for Kethvar space in 72 hours. Panic spread through diplomatic channels. The humans were going to attack the hegemony with only 48 ships against 600. It was suicide. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions to prevent the slaughter. Ambassador Sarah Chen attended these meetings and listened politely to offers of mediation. Species after species begged humanity to reconsider. They offered to negotiate with the Kethvar. They promised economic sanctions and diplomatic pressure. Sarah's response was always the same. We appreciate your concern, but humanity handles its own problems. The Terra fleet departed Earth right on schedule. 48 ships against the largest armada in galactic history. Military analysts across the galaxy predicted it would be over within hours of the first engagement. They were right, but not in the way they expected. Admiral Reeves did not meet the Kethvar fleet in open space. Instead, he took his ships directly into hegemony territory and began what became known as the Silent March. One by one, Kethvar worlds went dark. The first target was Keftar, a military shipyard system with strong defenses and experienced crews. The orbital monitors detected the human fleet approaching and sent warnings to the main Kethvar force. By the time help arrived, Keftar was silent. The system's defenses were intact but offline. The shipyards were undamaged but empty. Every Kethvar ship, station, and installation had been systematically disabled or destroyed. But there were no bodies, no debris, no signs of battle. It was as if the entire Kethvar presence had simply vanished. War leader Vextar studied the reports with growing unease. Where are the crews? Where are the defenders? Unknown, her intelligence officer reported. We found prison facilities on the fourth moon, but they are empty. No signs of execution or transportation. The truth was more disturbing than anyone guessed. The humans had not killed the Kethvar defenders. They had done something far worse. They had made them disappear so completely that no one knew what had happened to them. The second target was Mordak Prime, a fortress world that had never fallen in 300 years of warfare. Its planetary shields could withstand fleet bombardment. Its surface batteries could destroy approaching ships from 1,000,000 kilometers away. The Terra fleet arrived and the shields activated. The batteries powered up. The Kethvar defenders prepared for a siege that could last months. 3 hours later, the shields collapsed. The batteries went silent. The planet surrendered. Again, there were no bodies, no destroyed defenses. The installations were intact but empty. Somehow the humans had gotten past defenses that had protected the world for centuries and neutralized the entire garrison without apparent battle. By the fifth world, panic spread through Kethvar space. Civilian populations began fleeing toward the galactic rim. Military commanders demanded explanations from their intelligence services. How were the humans doing this? The answer came from a Kethvar spy who had infiltrated a human merchant ship months earlier. His final transmission revealed the terrifying truth. The humans had been preparing for this war for decades. Every human trader, diplomat, and scientist who had visited Kethvar space had been gathering intelligence. They had mapped every military installation, studied every defense system, and identified the psychological weaknesses of Kethvar culture. They knew how the hegemony thought, how they fought, and how to defeat them most efficiently. More than that, they had been placing assets throughout Kethvar territory. Sleeper agents, hidden weapons platforms, sabotage systems built into the very infrastructure the Kethvar relied on. The Silent March was not 48 ships conquering an empire. It was the activation of a network that had been years in the making. Dr. Alexei Petrov appeared on Kethvar communication channels from his laboratory on Earth. He was a small man with gray hair and gentle eyes, looking more like a teacher than a warrior. His voice was soft and academic as he delivered humanity's ultimatum. The Kethvar hegemony will surrender unconditionally within 72 hours, he said. Your military leaders will turn themselves in for war crimes tribunals. Your civilian populations will be relocated to designated worlds under human supervision. Your government will be dissolved and replaced by human administrators. He paused, adjusting his glasses. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why 67 species have already submitted to human authority rather than face the consequences of resistance. The transmission included files, detailed intelligence on every major galactic civilization, battle plans, biological weaknesses, economic vulnerabilities, psychological profiles. It was 200 years of careful observation and analysis, reduced to a simple message: we know how to destroy all of you. The HFY Supreme Command met in emergency session. Some argued for continued resistance. Others demanded immediate surrender. War leader Vextar studied the human intelligence files with growing horror. They know everything, she whispered. Our troop movements, our supply lines, even the genetic modifications of our royal bloodline. How is this possible? General Thexmore refused to believe it. Humans are weak. They cannot have done this alone. Someone is helping them. Who? Vextar demanded. Every species in the galaxy fears them now. The ethereals have recalled their fleets. The consortium has closed its trade routes. Even the council speaks in whispers about the Terra Doctrine. The debate ended when news arrived that the main HFY fleet had found Admiral Reeves. 600 ships against 48. Finally, the humans would face real opposition. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, the HFY hegemony formally surrendered. Their empire was dissolved, their military disbanded, their population scattered to refugee worlds. The species that had conquered dozens of civilizations was reduced to a minor power begging for human mercy. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity emerged from 200 years of peaceful obscurity to become the dominant military force in known space. The quiet species had become the apex predator, and they were just getting started. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Ambassadors from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as the reports came in. The HFY hegemony was gone. Not defeated, not occupied, but completely erased from galactic politics in less than 6 months. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the central podium, the same spot where she had once been ignored and dismissed. Now every alien eye in the chamber watched her with fearful attention. Her simple gray suit and calm expression seemed more threatening than any weapon. The former HFY territories are now under human protection, she announced. Civilian populations are being relocated to suitable worlds. Former military personnel are undergoing rehabilitation programs. Government officials have been processed, according to their level of cooperation. The word processed sent chills through the assembled ambassadors. No one asked what it meant. They were afraid of the answer. Council Speaker Vorthak cleared his throat nervously. The ancient alien who had led these meetings for centuries now seemed small and fragile. Ambassador Chen, the Council appreciates humanity's efficient resolution of the HFY threat. Perhaps we can discuss the establishment of normal diplomatic relations with the liberated territories. Sarah's smile was polite and cold. There are no liberated territories, there are human territories. The former HFY worlds will be administered by human governors until their populations demonstrate proper civilized behavior. But the Galactic Accords clearly state, began Ambassador Zekol of the Vorthan Collective. The Accords are guidelines for civilized species, Sarah interrupted. The HFY forfeited their right to protection under galactic law when they declared war on human civilians. They chose to be treated as animals. We obliged them. The casual cruelty in her words made several ambassadors shift uncomfortably in their seats. This was not the helpful, quiet Sarah Chen they had known for decades. This was something new and terrifying. Dr. Alexei Petrov's holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber. The elderly scientist looked even more harmless than usual, like someone's grandfather explaining a simple concept to children. I have been asked to brief the Council on humanity's intelligence-gathering activities, he said in his gentle voice. I believe this information will help prevent future misunderstandings. What followed was the most horrifying presentation in galactic history. For 200 years, while other species had seen humans as minor traders and curious explorers, they had actually been conducting the largest espionage operation ever recorded. Every human diplomat had been an intelligence officer. Every merchant ship had carried spy equipment. Every scientific expedition had gathered military data. The files appeared on screens throughout the chamber. Detailed profiles of every major civilization, complete with military capabilities, economic weaknesses, political vulnerabilities, and biological limitations. The humans knew which atmospheric compounds could poison Centaurian hive queens. They knew the genetic sequences that could cause madness in ethereal noble houses. They knew exactly how much pressure it took to crack Vorthon crystal armor. The Zephyrian wing joint can be disabled with a sonic frequency of 847.3 Hz, Petrov explained, pointing to a detailed anatomical diagram. Their entire flight capability depends on a single nerve cluster that can be severed with minimal surgical precision. Ambassador Kithara of the Zephyrian Consortium fell from her ceiling perch in shock. Her species had guarded the secret of their anatomy for millennia. How could the humans know? 200 years of patient observation, Petrov answered her, unspoken question. Every handshake, every medical emergency, every cultural exchange. We learned by helping. You trusted us because we seemed harmless. The data kept coming. Economic intelligence showing how to collapse interstellar trade networks. Political analysis revealing which governments could be toppled with minimal effort. Detailed plans for conquering every major civilization in the galaxy. The granite people can be defeated by introducing iron oxide particles into their atmospheric processors. Petrov continued in his academic tone. Their silicon-based biology cannot process ferrous compounds. Death occurs within 37 minutes of exposure. Ambassador Thekron of the Granite World spoke in his deep, rumbling voice. This is monstrous. You have planned genocide against species that have never threatened you. Sarah returned to the podium. We planned contingencies against species that might threaten us. The difference is important. You cannot justify this level of preparation for war, declared Ambassador Mithara of the Ethereal Houses. It shows clear aggressive intent. Does it? Sarah asked. We prepared for war but chose peace. We had the capability to conquer the galaxy decades ago, but we limited ourselves to 12 small colonies. We could have destroyed the Kethvar completely, but we chose to relocate their civilians. Our actions show restraint, not aggression. The twisted logic was undeniable. Humanity had demonstrated both incredible capability and surprising mercy. They could have been conquerors, but had chosen to be defenders. The fact that they had chosen peace made their transition to war even more terrifying. What do you want from us? Asked Ambassador Kretal of the Vorthon Collective. Nothing, Sarah replied. Continue your normal activities. Trade freely. Explore new worlds. Develop your cultures. Humanity asks only that you remember the price of threatening human civilians. But the galaxy was already fracturing from fear. Minor conflicts erupted as species tested each other's strength, afraid that appearing weak might make them targets. Some civilizations began building larger fleets, thinking they could intimidate humanity through shows of force. The Altarian Federation made the first mistake. They had always been aggressive neighbors, claiming border worlds through military pressure. When human colonists settled the planet Kepler 186f, the Altarians demanded they leave or face consequences. The human response was swift and devastating. Within 72 hours, the Altarian capital world was surrounded by human ships. Their government was given a simple choice: withdraw all claims to human territory or face the Terra Doctrine. The Altarians chose war. It lasted 6 hours. Unlike the Kethvar, the Altarians were not completely destroyed. Their military was dismantled, their aggressive leaders were removed, but their population was allowed to remain on their worlds under human oversight. The message was clear. Species that attacked humanity would be conquered, but those that submitted quickly might be treated with relative mercy. The Crystalline Dominion tried a different approach. They offered humanity a military alliance, suggesting they could help police the galaxy together. Admiral Reeves's response was broadcast on all channels. Humanity does not need partners. Humanity needs subjects who understand their place. Panic spread as more species realized the scope of human preparation. Intelligence agencies across the galaxy desperately tried to identify human agents in their governments. But the damage was already done. 2 centuries of infiltration had left humanity with assets everywhere. The Centaurian Hive Collective attempted preemptive surrender, offering to become a human protectorate voluntarily. They were politely refused. Humanity will determine which species require protection, Sarah told their ambassadors. Your submission is noted, but unnecessary at this time. The most terrifying aspect was humanity's patience. They didn't rush to conquer worlds or demand immediate submission. Instead, they waited and watched as fear tore the galaxy apart from within. Species after species discovered evidence of long-term human intelligence operations. Sleeper agents who had lived normal lives for decades. Monitoring devices built into alien technology. Biological samples that had been collected under the guise of medical cooperation. The Vorthon Collective found human observation posts hidden in their asteroid mining facilities. The Ethereals discovered that several of their most trusted advisors were human agents using advanced disguise technology. Even the ancient council archives contained human monitoring systems that had recorded every secret discussion for 50 years. Dr. Petrov released another briefing to the galaxy, this one even more disturbing than the first. It contained psychological profiles of entire species, showing how their cultures and instincts could be manipulated. The humans didn't just know how to destroy alien civilizations, they knew how to control them. Fear is the most reliable motivator, Petrov explained. More effective than greed, hatred, or even love, a properly frightened species will police itself, making direct control unnecessary. They will modify their behavior to avoid punishment, even when no punishment is threatened. He was describing exactly what was happening. The galaxy was paralyzed by fear of human retaliation. Species canceled military exercises to avoid appearing aggressive. Trade routes were modified to avoid human territory. Diplomatic meetings focused entirely on avoiding actions that might anger the Terra fleet. But the most chilling revelation came when the Galactic Historical Archive was accessed by human intelligence. They released records showing that humanity had been planning this transformation for over a century. Documents written decades before first contact with other species outlined strategies for galactic dominance. The humans had not been surprised by finding other civilizations. They had expected it and prepared accordingly. 5 years after the Battle of Kepler 442, the galaxy bore little resemblance to its former self. The Great Meeting Hall of New Concordia still hosted diplomatic sessions, but the chamber had been redesigned. Where once dozens of species had sat as equals, now they arranged themselves in careful hierarchies based on their relationship with humanity. At the center of it all sat Ambassador Sarah Chen, though her title had evolved to Prime Representative of Human Interests. She no longer wore simple gray suits. Her clothing now reflected her status as the most powerful diplomatic figure in known space, though she had maintained her preference for understated elegance over alien extravagance. The morning session began as they all did now, with reports from the Human Colonial Authority. Governor Martinez, promoted from her position on Kepler 442, stood before a display showing the current state of human-controlled territory. 37 star systems are now under direct human administration, she announced. Former Kethavar worlds continue their transition to civilian governance. Productivity is up 18% from pre-war levels. Crime rates have dropped to effectively zero. The assembled ambassadors listened in respectful silence. No one questioned the methods that achieved such impressive statistics. They had learned not to ask uncomfortable questions about human administrative techniques. The Altarian sectors report similar progress, Martinez continued. Their new government has formally requested inclusion in the Human Protection Zone. The request has been approved pending completion of their cultural adjustment programs. Cultural adjustment, another euphemism that made alien species shift uncomfortably in their seats. No one knew exactly what happened in these programs, but the results were undeniable. Former enemies became model citizens who praised human leadership and voluntarily provided intelligence on their own species. Admiral Marcus Reeves entered the chamber, and conversations died instantly. The man who had orchestrated the destruction of 2 galactic empires wore his uniform with casual authority. His cold blue eyes surveyed the assembled aliens like a shepherd counting sheep. The frontier expeditions have made contact with 17 new species beyond the galactic rim, he announced. 12 have already requested human protection after learning about galactic history. 3 are considering the matter. 2 have chosen to maintain their independence. He didn't mention what had happened to the other species. Everyone knew. There were always a few who chose the hard way. The ethereal ambassador, one of the few remaining representatives from the old guard, raised a trembling hand. Admiral, some of our outer colonies have reported increased human naval presence. Is there some threat we should know about? Reeves smiled, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. The human hegemony maintains patrol routes throughout our sphere of influence. Your colonies fall within that sphere. Our presence ensures their security. The message was clear. Human ships would go wherever they pleased, and alien objections were irrelevant. The ethereals had once commanded fleets that spanned sectors. Now they required human permission to move their own vessels between their home worlds. Dr. Alexei Petrov appeared via hologram, looking more frail than ever. Age had bent his shoulders and whitened his hair, but his mind remained sharp as a blade. His latest project was perhaps his most ambitious yet. The Galactic Education Initiative has achieved remarkable success, he reported. Over 4 million alien children are now enrolled in human-supervised schools. They are learning proper history, correct scientific methods, and appropriate social behaviors. Appropriate social behaviors meant learning to see humans as natural, leaders in their own species as junior partners in galactic civilization. The children returned home speaking perfect English alongside their native languages and viewing human culture as the pinnacle of development. Phase 2 of the initiative will expand to adult populations, Petrov continued. Voluntary re-education programs will be available on all major worlds. Citizens can learn improved economic systems, efficient government structures, and modern conflict resolution. No one asked what happened to those who declined the voluntary programs. The few who had tried to investigate such questions had disappeared, along with their families, their records, and sometimes their entire research teams. Ambassador Kretal of the Vorten Collective spoke carefully. Dr. Petrov, some of our people have expressed concern about preserving traditional cultural practices. How does the initiative address these legitimate historical interests? Petrov's grandfatherly smile was warm and reassuring. Culture is important, Ambassador. We encourage species to maintain their harmless traditions. Music, art, cuisine, festivals. These things enrich galactic civilization. What we discourage are harmful practices like aggressive expansionism, racial supremacy, and inefficient government systems. Harmful practices. The definition seemed to expand every year. Recently, it had grown to include independent military development, unsupervised space exploration, and economic systems that didn't integrate with human trade networks. The session continued with routine business, trade agreements that favored human merchants, research collaborations led by human scientists, military exercises supervised by human officers. Every aspect of galactic civilization now operated under human oversight. But the most significant change was harder to define. It was visible in how alien ambassadors spoke to each other, how they carried themselves, how they reacted to human presence. Fear had evolved into something more complex, a mixture of respect, dependence, and resigned acceptance. They had learned to police themselves. When the session ended, Sarah Chen remained in the chamber as the other ambassadors filed out. She was joined by Admiral Reeves and Dr. Petrov's hologram. These three humans effectively controlled the destiny of hundreds of billions of sentient beings across thousands of worlds. The RIM expeditions are ahead of schedule, Reeves reported. We've made contact with the Andromeda Gateway Consortium. Their technology is impressive, but their military doctrine is predictably conventional. Preliminary intelligence suggests they could be integrated within 2 years. Excellent, Sarah replied. What about the deep space monitoring stations? Any signs of the Devourers? Petrov nodded grimly. Long-range sensors have detected energy signatures consistent with their technology. The Devourer fleets are approximately 30 years out, possibly less. The galaxy will need to be unified before they arrive. The Devourers were humanity's real target, an extragalactic species that consumed entire civilizations for resources. Human scientists had detected their approach decades earlier and realized that only a united galaxy could hope to resist them. The problem was that galactic civilization was too fractured, too individualistic, too chaotic to mount effective resistance. So humanity had chosen to unite it by force. Public opinion polls show increasing acceptance of human leadership, Sarah noted. 67% of surveyed species now view the human hegemony as beneficial. 31% are neutral or undecided. Only 2% express active opposition. The resistance movements, Reeves asked, eliminated or contained? The Free Kethvar Alliance was disbanded last month. Their leaders chose to join our cultural adjustment programs rather than face the consequences of continued rebellion. Dr. Petrov coughed, a reminder of his advancing age. Sometimes I wonder if we've gone too far. The fear in their eyes, it troubles me. Sarah's expression softened, slightly. Alexei, you designed the psychological profiles that made this possible. You know better than anyone that fear is temporary but respect is permanent. Our grandchildren will live in a galaxy where war between civilizations is unthinkable. Because we made ourselves too terrifying to challenge, he replied sadly. Because we made ourselves too valuable to lose, she corrected. Every species now depends on human protection, human technology, human trade networks. We've created a system where attacking humanity would be economic and military suicide. Admiral Reeves pulled up a galactic map showing human influence zones. Red areas indicated direct control. Yellow showed protectorates and allied territories. Green marked independent species that had accepted human oversight. Only a few small sectors remained unmarked, isolated civilizations that hadn't yet encountered human expansion. The Tau Ceti Confederacy has requested membership in the protection zone, he noted. They're offering to provide military bases in exchange for security guarantees. Approved, Sarah said without hesitation. What about the Rigel system? Still independent, but their trade relationships are now entirely dependent on human shipping networks. They'll join formally within the year. The map told the story of humanity's rise to galactic dominance, not through conquest alone, but through a combination of military power, economic integration, and psychological manipulation. They had made themselves indispensable while demonstrating the consequences of opposition. A priority message arrived from Earth. President Martinez, Elena's sister, promoted after her heroic defense of Kepler 442, appeared on the communication screen. Behind her, the skyline of New Geneva showed the massive orbital elevators and defense platforms that now protected humanity's homeworld. The Senate has approved the Deep Space Colonization Act, she announced.